Hey there, team. Rowan here. A question was posed back when I was still in college that I feel merits some consideration on my part. We were talking about why someone might fail to take their medication or continue to say that they're having significant problems when they're not. And the question really was, what is the gain from remaining sick? This can obviously be answered in many ways, depending on the circumstance. And I began to think of this in terms of my own life and my own struggles, with my fears both about, quite frankly, taking new medications, or getting surgeries that I didn't really want, or all kinds of other medical things, but also just like my failure to drive. You know, a normal thing around these parts. Everybody drives. I don't drive. And I want to get into that. I want to get into the why. And part of it was just, if I don't try, I can't fail. Right? And that's not really how that works. If you don't try, you just kind of automatically fail. That logic never worked in any other area of my life, so I'm not sure why I thought it would with driving. Other than the fact that I mostly had other ways around. Like, let's face it, I don't leave my home very often. I work from home these days. And I would generally prefer to be some kind of happy recluse, but I understand that that really isn't a responsible possibility, a reasonable possibility. I gotta do conventions. I gotta see the people. Have to see my family and my friends. And I also was actually agoraphobic at one point. Like, for real. And so now I feel like I'm not really allowed to just want to stay home anymore, which also isn't true, but I understand I've internalized that pretty hard. But I've always lived in areas where they were either walkable or by a bus line, or I could carpool. I even used to take cabs. Like, a lot. And I don't trust these newfangled services where no one is vetted the way a cab driver would have been, so I don't really do that anymore. I don't typically go places Rob doesn't go, so it is effectively carpooling. In any case, come back with me to 2014-15-ish. Let's go back in time. I'm working at a hospital as a counseling intern. I've been attempting, and mostly failing, to prioritize my health, and instead, I've been obsessing over something that is generally not seen as a big deal, not because I wanted to obsess over it, but because someone else made me. It was my supervisor's fault. She looked at me, learned that I didn't drive, and decided I would be her special project. Other people who worked in that hospital didn't drive, for one reason or another, but I was targeted. I was the one with something wrong with me. And I imagine if I told her that I was, like, arachnophobic, she'd have stuck me into a bucket of spiders for exposure therapy, which is not how any of that works, by the way. Now, for me personally, passing the test, as in the driving test, meant that I didn't have to retake the permit test, which would have been embarrassing. And eventually it was just... I did like having a license. I did. I wouldn't have to have the strange looks when I had the non-driver ID instead. I wouldn't have had to have anybody questioning how I function in life. Again, there's like other ways around. Some places there really aren't. I will grant you that. Some places you really need a car in America. I tend to avoid those places. So between all that and the fact that I don't drink, I'm realizing there are like a lot of things that I just don't do that other people can't imagine life without. What couldn't I imagine my life without? Chocolate and cheese, maybe. In any case, I wanted to be proud of myself, too. But I had trouble with that because the whole process was such a humiliating ordeal, and not something I wanted to begin with. So rather than feeling accomplished, I just feel like I gave in. I did this thing that I had no desire to do, just because someone else told me to do it. How much of my life has been like that? You know what? Let me just tell you how the driving test actually went for me, because I realized I skipped that. We're gonna go back. We're gonna go back to the actual driving test. Because I took the thing 3 times before I passed. The first test went wrong for a number of reasons. Mostly just, like, in my head reasons. For one, it happened that the guy looked like an almost assailant of mine, and was way too cocky, and in general pretty obviously hated women. So that was fun and, like, weirdly triggering. And not really his fault, except that he was also an asshole. This is also true. But I felt remarkably unsafe. And he was also really vague. Like, dude, don't say, Sunday driver, over and over and over without specifying if I am being a Sunday driver or if I should be a Sunday driver. He claimed I was speeding and gave me a mockingly presented pop quiz at the end, I'm a pretty cautious driver for obvious reasons, so no, I was not speeding. That I know. Also, he told me I was too cautious. That one I'll believe. So, being too cautious and speeding, one of these are probably not true. He wouldn't even look at my mother, who had to basically chase him down to ask if I passed. His response? She needs work. Asshole. So after about a month of me never wanting to try again, my well-meaning parents sent me off with an instructor about 2 weeks before my second road test. This particular driving lesson went so poorly, it ended with me sobbing hysterically. Okay, come with me yet again, stick with me. And oddly enough, none of the crying was really due to the driving itself. That's how you know this was great. Before we even started, I got a call from the driving instructor saying that he was looking on Google and couldn't figure out where my house was. I did my best to explain, to which he responded, I know the area. Like, okay, dude, if you know the area, why are you having a problem? The houses are clearly numbered, and otherwise it's just kind of us and deer, but whatever. He came to the house to pick me up, and drove the car to a lot where he would, in theory, have me drive. Again, the driving part was not the part that flipped me out. In fact, the only driving he had me do initially was, like, weaving around parking spaces. I did this while he occasionally slapped my hand, not entirely explaining why, and then saying things like, you looking to get slapped? And, you want to get hit, don't you? And then laughing. Like, this is a funny thing to say, after I've already told him that, no, seriously, I'm a survivor of abuse, and that's kinda entirely triggering, please don't. He tried to fix it by saying I could slap him back, and then holding out his hand and forcing me to slap it, even after I told him that made me really uncomfortable. Also, fun fact, in case you don't know, I have some cartilage where there should probably be more bone in my wrist. Like, I got bone deformities throughout every bit of me, all of me, deformed. Bones. My bones are deformed. And so it really, really hurts when hit, even as a light slap. It's like, if you ever hit your funny bone on something, it's that feeling. It's just that nauseating, but in your wrist. That's what I get. So, also grabbing my hand is a terrible plan because of that. It's like not quite as bad now that I have a little bit more muscle on my wrist, but at the time, it was terrible. And I still did not cry here. And that was all preempted by him saying, I'm gonna be a male chauvinist pig for a second, and then just, asking me really politely if I know how they train for football. Dude, you wouldn't have come across as a jackass if you had just asked the question or talked about training outright without announcing that you are in fact a jackass. You didn't have to, preface, hey, I know you're a female. That was the part that was the problem. But, whatever. I must have done something right, though, because then he had me go on to phase 2. Keep in mind, the first hour of instruction was him driving around town, mumbling things as he thought of them, calling this a demo, like that would be helpful to me. Like I'd never sat in a car in my life. I chalked it up to the fact that he was probably 8,000 years old. Part 2 involved him making me floor the gas, and then wait until he told me to stop, to stomp on the brake as hard as I could. That was my instruction. Everything about this was terrifying and extremely dangerous, yet I managed not to cry at this part. Still did not cry. I did, however, consider calling someone to pick me up, or just, the police, because I clearly was trapped in a car with a lunatic. He said this was to teach me what it felt like in case it ever happened. Why do this to the person who already said she's been in multiple car accidents? And yet still, I had not cried. I feel I need to mention, I'm 28 at this point in time. I'm nearing 30. I'm not a child, so the fact that everyone involved in this keeps treating me like I'm a teenager is fascinating. But still, didn't cry. And at this point he decides I'm ready to drive home. 2 hours have almost passed. And I have done nothing that I would have wanted to do, such as things that are on the actual road test. By telling me I'm going to drive home, by the way, what he meant was that my feet would control the gas and brake, but his hands would never leave the steering wheel. So this old man is draped across my friggin' lap to control the car, questioning why I'm trying to fight him when we're veering on top of the line on my side and otherwise kind of coasting with the wheel right next to the... I'm just waiting for the left mirror to get clipped off, really. This is when I start crying. A lot. He tells me not to be embarrassed and that he isn't scared. If he was scared after all, he wouldn't have let me drive home. He didn't see me doing any driving. None. And I did not care if he was scared, nor was I particularly embarrassed. He also used the word angsty when I asked to pull over. I explained to him that I was afraid of getting hit again, and that's why I was crying. He told me not to be afraid and that no one was going to rear-end us. I explained that no, I was afraid of him hitting me. I felt unsafe in the car. He laughed. Then he said he was sorry and that he didn't mean to make fun of me. I didn't even know what he meant by that. By the time we got home, he decided not to let me do the parking in front of Rob's car, and to instead demo how easy it is. He did what I could only describe as like a 20, maybe 10,000 point turn, and actually backed into Rob's car. There was no visible damage at first, though the license plate did make a satisfying pop noise, as if to say, "Ha, you asshole." Though Rob's license plate did actually pop off soon after. This fucker proceeded to tell me that he'd be calling my mother to tell her I did a great job. At this point, again, I am 28 years old. I am a grown woman. I'll call my own damn mother. And he let me know that I'm totally not ready for the test, and I would fail it if I took it now. Like, he wasn't wrong, but for the wrong reasons. Gee, thanks, guy who didn't see me drive and just instead freaked me out. Our interaction ended when he reminded me that we had been together for 2 hours and that his price is $35 an hour. $70 to get hit. $70 to... But that I could pay at any time and he's not worried. I told him I didn't think I could handle another day of that right away, and that I wanted to cancel the 9:30 for the next morning. But maybe see him at some point, I guess, in the future for like a 3-point turn or parallel parking sometime next weekend, maybe. He looked at me like I was a moron, handed me a piece of paper that reads, "How to parallel park for the road test," and then said he'd see me at 9:30 the next day. I went upstairs. Rob was taking a nap, as he still wasn't feeling well all weekend. I tried to hook a right to the bedroom and instead flopped down on the floor by the door and just started ugly sobbing. There was so much snot. Rob did not wake up, but our friend and at the time roommate, Perry, recognized the sound of hysterical tears, and so burst through his doorway with a box of tissues. I literally cried on Perry's shoulder for like half an hour. He's a trooper, really. Rob woke up around then, and I'd calmed down enough to be coherent about what had happened. This was a good thing, as Rob's instinct was to panic and think that I was in some way physically hurt. I was still hyperventilating now and then, but not to the point of a full-blown panic attack. I contacted my parents, explained what happened, and they laughed at me, telling me to suck it up. Oh, parents of the year, am I right? Rob then called my mother. Why is everyone calling my mom for me? To explain that we would not be seeing that man again. My parents then said to Rob, "Oh, we're sorry. We just thought that she was exaggerating and being dramatic. We didn't realize she was actually upset because my word means nothing." This may explain how my life has gone the way it has, actually. Like, it's fine now. It's good now. Because Rob, believes me when I talk. Most people haven't over the years. Anyway, so Rob took over helping me polish everything up driving-wise, though I was just kind of a wreck the next weekend. Rob and Perry are both endlessly patient. For the record, I did not pay the driving instructor man, but my parents still did. I did get sort of an apology from the instructor man through him calling my mother. He did have my number, but whatever. And saying he was sorry he upset me, which I guess is better than, "I'm sorry she was upset." He figured it was because of the gas and brake exercise, and while that was stupid and again dangerous, that was not at all what freaked me out. Which, I told him, in detail. Seriously. I swear I told him what the problem was. Is there just something about me that completely invalidates everything I say about my own existence? It's fine. It's fine. Good times. In any case, I was pre-freaked out for the second test, based on that instructor, and the first time I took the test, so I actually went so slowly that I had trouble getting up a hill. That guy was nice, though. And then the third one I actually passed, and I wonder how much of that was just due to the fact that, I didn't care anymore. No more shits were given. I just wanted it to be done. And B, the person grading was a woman around my size. Like, not to be sexist, but, like, that might have helped. Not to be a pig. There is something extra creepy about being a survivor and then being trapped in a car with an older man and having to take all his orders. In essence, that was what the test was for me over and over until the third one. But I was done. Having passed was great, if only for the wait to the next one to now be over. The pressure each time was slowly killing me. It became everything. It took over every aspect of my life with the sheer power of not want. I just didn't want to think about it anymore. Passing the driver's test meant I didn't have to worry about the test, but then I had a car I didn't like and couldn't really afford with the insurance, the upkeep, the responsibility, and the assumption that I would then drive. We got the car from Rob's used car salesman stepdad. He is as much of a stereotype as you're picturing, who neither of us particularly get along with anyway. So the car became an issue of, do I have the audacity to ask for help? After all, I can drive. Everyone involved, except for Rob, seemed to think that passing the test immediately cured me of my not want. I did not. Just as doing any other terrible thing forever, over and over and over, doesn't automatically make people Stockholm Syndrome themselves into loving the thing. Nope. I just had more questions, more pressure, and I feared that I'd wind up on the side of the road sobbing and hysterical, missing my appointments that were otherwise never an issue to get to on time. Also, just so we're, totally clear, any lingering depression wound up more apparent when it was on me. Because rather than being able to say, well, better get going so my ride doesn't get upset, I would just not want to leave the house. I would just crumble. I felt like I was constantly letting everyone down either way. Or that there was something significantly wrong with me beyond all the things that have actually made my life harder. There's already stuff. I've already got stuff. I didn't need this too. It's frustrating to note that the things I actually wanted to work on and struggle with were somehow not good enough for too many people around me. I fully realized that I was not those people, and they weren't my friends, but it was during a time of my life where I put too much stake into what people who didn't matter thought of me. So I found myself falling from pushing on and on and on and through and up and just wanting to be left alone to rot. Of course, Rob and my actual friends are supportive and would never let me do that to myself, as much as I may have tried over the years. Still, this was upsetting because I understood that it all hinged on this idea of having a car and driving as freedom. Somehow, in this lonely, expensive, wasteful death machine. Again, Rob is all for carpooling and is steady in his belief that I should not have to drive if I do not want to. He genuinely believes I shouldn't do anything that I don't want to do, but again, that would mean that I would never do anything. I would just draw. I wouldn't even tell people what I drew. God, it got to a point where sometimes I'd pretend that I want to drive. Sometimes I'd pretend that I was already someone who drove. And it was a fun fantasy, but ultimately left me feeling empty because I was lying to myself so I could feel worth more than I did as a non-driver. I wanted to feel normal. A lot of the things that I put myself through over the years were to feel what I decided was normal. Not based in reality, just this made-up version of reality. I felt like while I was told that I'm not, I must certainly be a burden and something to be ashamed of. So here we return to this idea of wanting to stay sick. I now know that it's not really a sickness. At least this part isn't. But I did start effectively saying, no, look, I'm too sick. I can't drive because I'm too sick. Very literally doing the thing. I'd been self-sabotaging and ruining so much of my health, both physical and mental, in an effort to convince those around me that I am sick enough to not do this one thing that I have never done before anyway. So I got my license, and then I never drove again. So after about a year of that car just kind of sitting there and dying, we sold it, and I got a non-driver ID again. Thank God. Non-driver IDs are less expensive, too. Just saying. Man, I called that car the Grey Ghost. Did I mention that? And I understand that my aversion to driving is not the car's fault. My tendency to personify objects a bit probably didn't help the guilt, though. All that having been said, I did face my fears. These are things I can be proud of, because they were important to my growth as a person. And that is the most important part. Rock on.